Where my girls at? Where my girls at? Independent, free spirit. Ooh, it's something serious. Where my girls at? We link up in a cool minute. Where my girls at? It's going down, down. Where my girls at? It's going down, down. It's going down tonight. We going out tonight. Yeah, right. We going out tonight. It's going down tonight. Yeah, right. It's going down tonight. We going out tonight. Yeah, right. We going out tonight. It's going down tonight. Yeah, right.
Hey, Facebook. It's Gloria. We'll be right with you. We're going to start any second now, okay? So I'm excited about that. Super excited. It's going to be phenomenal, and we're excited about what we're bringing you today. Different topic. You're going to fall in love with it. I'm very excited about it. It's going to be awesome. Our music started. All right, guys. All right. It's going down. Hello. You are listening to We Got Issues with the Force of Friendship on 910 a.m. the Superstation, WFDF Radio. And it's your girl, Crisette Ellis from the D. And you know what? It was a beautiful day in the D. It's a little cloudy, not a little cloudy now, but I am so excited to be your host for today. So thank you for spending this hour with us. Remember to download the 910 a.m. Superstation app. And let me give a shout out to all of you that are watching us on either the 910 a.m. Superstation or the Force of Friendship Facebook page. We love the comments, and we love that you post. And don't forget to share, because we want to increase our tribe. And you know, I'm going to say it, right? We absolutely love hearing from you. So don't be shy. Give us a call at 313-778-7600 and give us your comment or tell us your issue. Oh my goodness, you guys, we got a lot. It's a lot to talk about. And I'm telling you, I'm finding out that 60 minutes is not enough time to talk about it all. But there are a couple of stories that are in the news. The first one is OMG. Did you guys get a chance, girlfriends, to watch the footage of the 12-story condo that collapsed in Ball Harbor? Just unbelievable. Unbelievable. It is so
2 a.m. in the morning.
2 a.m. So you pretty much know everybody was tucked in, sleeping. You know, according to the news, one person is dead, and they are looking for 99 people who are unaccounted for. And then they recently came on and said the family of Paraguay's first lady, her family is missing. So that's a big deal.
Whose family, Crisette?
The family of the first lady of Paraguay.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Is some of her family is missing. Is there echo? Okay. I can hear echo. Do you all hear that?
Just recently.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Our thoughts and prayers are going out to those families. You know, I cannot even imagine what they're going through. So we absolutely want to keep them in our thoughts and in our prayers. And then on another note, Mr. Rudy Giuliani. They just done snatched. Come on, they done snatched his law license, and he cannot practice in New York.
The mayor, and now he can't even practice.
What? He can't. You talking about going to hero to hello?
From zero to hero.
No, they just took. They just will not allow him to practice law in the state of New York. And that's a big dang old deal. So I'm telling you, it's a lot going on. But you know what, you guys, today's show is one of the most important shows that we can talk about. And of course, that is the health of our world, the health of planet Earth. You know, many times when we talk about health, you know, we're talking about staying healthy, eating right, exercising. We talk about how to keep ourselves mentally healthy. You know, we talk about keeping families and relationships healthy. But how often do we have an in-depth conversation on the health of our environment, the health of Earth, the health of the world? Well, today I am so excited that we are going to tackle this topic. And I'm so excited that we have a guest here today, Dr. Victor Carmona, and I'm going to introduce him in a few minutes. But before we formally meet Dr. Carmona, I got to bring my girlfriends in. And so I'm going to throw it to my co-host on today. That is from the West Coast, my girl, Caterina Harris Earl.
Day. It is a good day. It really is a good day. Yeah, I was muted all around because I got some construction happening in the background, but I just finished. So hopefully you won't hear that through. But I'm telling you, yeah, that's what I woke up to, Chris, was seeing that and the building collapsed. And, you know, yesterday it was a bridge that collapsed. A bridge collapsed. And I thought, you know, I don't think ironic is the word, but as the president is fighting for this infrastructure bill, in the middle of fighting for voter suppression, in the middle of fighting for gun rights, which every one of those is a worthy show. I mean, how clear can it be? Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, wow. It's just a lot to pray for consistently. And I love going to, we have something called the Space Center here. I can't remember the full name of it, but it's one of my favorite places to take my grandchildren to. And they have this, you know, one of those rooms where the whole thing is like the globe, and you could see they take you all the way to the depths of the ocean and all the way to the high. And just hearing all the statistics and the things that are taking place, it didn't used to feel like it mattered for our generation until you started watching things like Michael Moore's show and hearing our former vice president talk about it. But it's real. It is so real. And being in California where we have all the fires, I'm telling you, it's like you don't want your air to be damaged. It is essential. So I'm looking forward to learning something today about what I can do and to contribute. So Gloria, hello. They love your yellow.
Hey.
Yellow.
Well, you know, I was thinking about y'all. I was like, there's got to be something in my closet with some yellow. Hey, radio show. Hey, radio, WFDF. I'm so excited to be here with 9:10 a.m., the Superstation, and with the Force of Friendships. As we talk about, we got issues, and we talk about this topic. Okay, first I want to tell you about the building in Florida, and they said it could be an earthquake. And then today, we're talking about climate control. So I am so interested in where we know our planet is taking a change, and those who choose to lean in and take advantage of it, and those who choose to ignore. You know, there's just so much about this, and it has to do with so much. So I'm very excited about this topic. I am also very tuned in to the fact that we've got a lot going on in the world, And so I've spent a lot of my time today talking with different women about emotional management when so much is going on. I mean, it is so real that the balance between the joy and the balance between us being grateful and the balance between our reality and the balance between what we don't know and the balance between understanding the politics and the balance between understanding the nature. You know, there's so much happening. 1 minute you're happy, 1 minute you're sad, 1 minute you're happy. And I was getting the phone calls before I got to the news because I went and worked out this morning with this new trainer who like to kill me. I worked out with him from 6 to 7, and then I got in my car and went to sleep from 7 to 8, y'all, really. And the cop came by my car and said, knock, 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 are you okay? I was gone.
No
I'm like,
way.
yeah, I'm okay. And then 2 minutes later, I found myself on Clubhouse talking. You guys, world changes like this, like this, like this, like this, like this. So we're excited about this show. We're excited about our friends on Facebook, and we're excited about our international audience. And I'm throwing it down to North Carolina, Sabrina Goodwin. Monday, every day is Monday. How you doing, Sabrina?
I'm great. Good to see you guys. So good to see you guys. Everybody's looking good. I am just wanting to jump right into the show. There's so much to lean into, so much to learn. Our world is changing rapidly. It cannot continue to go the way it's going. Our earth, we won't be on this earth. We won't have an earth to be on. And so I'm excited, Crisette, that you brought the topic to us and can't wait to meet our guest. I understand he's smart, he's passionate, he's well educated, and I'm all ears. So thank you.
Well, awesome. Well, I am so excited. Before I bring our guest to the stage, let me just give you a little bit of background. And when I tell you this topic is so many nuances, there's so many directions that this conversation can go in. So I'm just going to start here, and then we're going to bring our guest in. Since the Industrial Revolution, the global annual temperature has increased in total by a little more than 1 degree Celsius or 2 degrees Fahrenheit. Between 1880, the year that accurate record keeping began, and 1980, it rose by an average of 0.07 degrees Celsius every 10 years. Since 1981, the rate of increase has more than doubled. For the last 40 years, we have seen the global annual temperature rise by 0.18 degrees Celsius or 0.32 degrees Fahrenheit. The result, a planet that has never been hotter. 9 of the 10 warmest years since 1880 have occurred since 2005, and the 5 warmest years on record have all occurred since 2015. Climate change deniers have argued that there has been a pause or a slowdown in rising global temperatures. But numerous studies, including a 2018 paper published in the Journal of Environmental Research Letters, have disproved this claim. The impacts of global warming are harming people around the world. Now, climate scientists have concluded that we must limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2040 if we are to avoid a future which everyday life around the world is marked by the worst, most devastating effects: the extreme droughts, wildfires, floods, tropical storms, and other disasters that we refer to as collectively as climate change. These effects are felt by all people in one way or another, but are experienced most acutely by the underprivileged, the economically marginalized, and people of color, for whom climate change is often a key driver of poverty, displacement, hunger, and social unrest. So for this, yes, I know that's a whole lot. For this,
that's a lot.
Absolutely, it is a lot, and I'm so excited about this topic. So for this discussion, we have a scientist and academic to help us understand climate change, global warming, understand it all. And so I want to bring we got issues, Dr. Victor Carmona. Hello. So let me tell you a little bit about who he is. He is an associate professor in biology in the biology department at the University of Detroit Mercy, as well as the director of sustainability for the College of Engineering and Science. Additionally, he serves as a research associate with the Center for Eco Health Research at the University of El Salvador. Dr. Carmona's research focuses on the ecology and evolutionary biology of interspecies interactions. His most recent publication explored how land use practices in Latin America's Northern Triangle are exerting changes over the ecology of insects that transmit, and I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce this right, Chagas, a parasitic tropical disease that has no cure. As Director for Sustainability, Dr. Carmona is principally responsible for coordinating integrative research collaborations that empower community partners by cultivating data-driven strategies. Dr. Carmona has served 3 times as a Fulbright scholar. So it is my honor and privilege to welcome to We Got Issues, Dr. Carmona. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, can you hear me? Okay. Awesome. Welcome to the show. Dr. Carmona, this by far is one of the most important conversations that the entire world must engage in. So can you briefly tell us what you do?
And so working in the States gives me that advantage of being able to show how science and data-driven strategies can be incorporated into climate science and climate adaptation.
Wow, that's a lot.
That's a lot. And I'm telling you, I know that this topic is very, very broad, and you can talk about, one aspect, and I'm sure there are 5, 10, 15 other aspects. So we're going to try to cover as much as we can. We know in an hour we won't be able to cover it all, but I know my girlfriends are excited that you are here. I know that our listeners are excited that you're here. So before we go to break, I know the one question that a lot of times is on everybody's mind is, what is global warming, and is there a difference between global warming and climate change?
Great question. So climate change is the overarching term that's preferred, and that's because global warming is one element of the climate changing. When I have a talk that I give when I travel overseas, because I work a lot with non-scientists. It's important. Collaboration is a really big piece of what I'm going to be talking about today. So we talk about climate change because a lot of folks really aren't clear on how the climate on our planet works to begin with. So how do you talk about climate change without understanding how climate works? So we start there, and then we prefer that term because one of the effects, of course, is the one that you described, which is really important, and that is that we're changing the chemistry of the atmosphere. Think of the atmosphere as a particles, and they're trapping heat. CO2 is a big one, but so is methane, so is nitrous oxide. There's other greenhouse gases that are there. They are doing an important job, which is keeping heat retained in the planet. The problem is that when we change that chemistry, they retain more heat. And as you mentioned, the particles, the parts per million of these gases have increased since industrialization. And so that is trapping more heat. That's accelerating a lot of that energy that gets redistributed in the planet, what we call climate. And of course, then that contributes to melting ice over land, which contributes to sea level rise, which contributes to changes in global dynamics, like the global conveyor belt, which exacerbates other issues like frequency and intensity of storms. So climate change is the one that encompasses all of that. Global warming is one element of that.
Wow. You know what? We're going to take a break. And when we come back, I'm going to go to the girlfriends because I know they have some questions to ask you. And we want our audience to call in 313-778-7600 with your questions for our guest today, Dr. Victor Carmona. We'll be right back with you after the break.
The following message has been brought to you by the Doctors of
Hey, you guys, we're going to try to see if we can fix the audio and make it even better with Victor. So hold on one second and let's see if you so we are talking global warming, you guys. We're talking global warming, and just be honest, how many of you are religious just with recycling? I happen to live both in California and Chicago, where in Chicago, if you don't recycle, you get fined. And same here in California. But I go to certain places, and certainly is generational too. I think where people don't even think about some places in Middle America. I can't remember where I was, but there are a lot of places that just the basics of recycling, all of these are not good. And you know what? We do use these plastic bottles from Costco, but honestly, the best water I get is when I am just drinking it directly from my filtration system. It's healthier. It's even better. But what do you do? How conscious are you at, must in your county? How conscious of you are you at your recycling and the things that you do? What do you do for the environment? We'd love to hear. Hold on. We're on a commercial break. We're coming back.
That's why you want to take it up like a man. All right. We are back. And we are so excited about our topic on today. It's Stop It. You're hurting me. And we're not talking about hurting an individual, but we're talking about hurting our earth. And of course, I'm sure that a lot is going on with the astronauts. They're, constantly going up and looking at, Venus and all of these other planets. But right now, Earth is the only one that we know can sustain us. So we need to make sure that we are taking care of business when it comes to sustaining and making sure that our Earth is healthy. And so on today, we have Dr. Victor Carmona with us today, and he is an assistant professor right there at Mercy College, and we're excited that he is our guest. And so we want you to call us at 313-778-7600 with your questions, because I tell you, he's very smart. I couldn't even read his entire bio.
Right.
Like 30 minutes. So you absolutely, if you have a question about climate change, global warming, I guarantee you he can answer your questions. And so, Dr. Carmona, can you just share with us real quickly, just some of the things that you think is very important for our listeners to know when it comes to global warming?
Yes. If I could break it down to two sections, right? The science part, which is in my background, and then I'll give you a little bit on the action side, because I know that that's also a big piece of this, right? What do we do moving forward? So on the science part, we have to think about climate change in two scales. Global, what you see on TV, right? These patterns of storms, these are global phenomena that we need to better understand what's contributing to sea level rise, what's contributing to more intense and more frequent storms in different parts of the planet. Even global warming, why in some areas it's warming faster than others. Those are important global dynamics that produce those. But locally, at the small scale, they manifest in very different ways. So there are parts of the planet, because of climate change, that are getting wetter and cooler, or wetter and hotter, and other parts is getting cooler and drier, and it's a different combination. It has to do with the way that climate works on the planet. What climate change is doing is exacerbating these global processes that manifest differently locally. So I've heard this on the TV news too often, where you'll have one senator from the West Coast say, "Oh no, it's not hot here; it's getting colder. We're getting snows in." They're misunderstanding the local phenomena with the global phenomena, and so that's an issue, and it has to do with understanding how climate works on the planet. So that's number one. The science really plays out differently at the scale that you talk about it, and then of course the action part is everything we're seeing, and I don't know if you saw on the news also that there's a leaked report from the IPCC, the UN Council on Climate Change, and it's a peer review, and it came out a little earlier than it was supposed to, and they're basically saying that all of these thresholds that we're supposed to hit after 1.5 degrees warming, which is the maximum that we've agreed as industrialized nations, it looks like we're going to pass that in 2030, 2040. We're going to cross that much sooner than expected, and what they're saying is, there are processes that once we cross that threshold, there's no coming back. I'll give you an example. Once we lose glaciers,
Right.
they're gone. How do you get them back? You can't get them back, right? And that ice is reflecting heat. So once we lose that, how do you get that back? Now what do we do with that excess heat? As the boreal forest and the permafrost melt, all that CO2 that's frozen right now and starts decomposing, it's going to release CO2. How do you get that back? Once it decomposes, right? So there are processes that once they occur, they trigger certain levels of changes. And what this leaked report says is there's no coming back once we cross them. And so what I want to make clear is the planet is going to be here long after us. The question is, are we as a society going to continue to thrive on this planet? And this is an urgent concern that we need to address.
Got it. So, you know what, when you said, and I would just sit here and you said, in 2030, 2040, and I'm doing the math, I'm like, this is 2021. So you're talking about 9 years, 19 years. I mean, you're not talking, I'm thinking,
You'll be alive.
I'll be 200 years old. I'll be alive. We will all be alive. Wow, this is serious. This is really, really a serious conversation. I believe, Caterina, you wanted to ask Dr. Carmona something?
Yeah, this is really, really near and dear to my heart. And when we look at, for example, the scripture that says, if you defile the land, it will vomit you out. I think that just totally goes in with what you said. The earth will last. The question is, will we? And so I just want to know America's blueprint. How responsible are we in America for what's taking place on the whole globe? And what country, I'm sure we're up there, if not number one, what countries in the world are great, best to model? And then lastly, it just seems like everything is political. The gun issue is political. Everything is political. Right. What practical things can we do that in America that would make a big blueprint that might stand a chance of getting through politically?
So I mean, I can comment on this. My background is in the science, so forgive me if I kind of go back to the safety zone of talking about the science, but responsibility in changes with age, right? The United States is not a very old country, but even if you broaden it up and look at developed countries, our definition for developed post-industrial is not that long ago. So we're not doing a great job of incorporating data into our decision making. We have known that fossil fuels, back in the industrial age, it was carbon. Today it's gas and CO2, gasoline, right? And so that issue of global warming and changing the chemistry of the atmosphere, we've known that since the 1800s. The data has been around since I looked it up. The first report is in Europe, and it's in the 1890s. And it makes it into the popular media as soon as the 1910s. So before the First World War, there were newspaper articles being published about, wow, if we had more CO2 in the atmosphere, we're going to be catching more heat. We're going to be trapping more heat, And so we've known about this for quite some time. And in fact, the first report of that it was fossil fuels, human activity that was contributing to that CO2 was in the 50s. And so we've known about this, and we've known about the science for, more than 2 generations. So the question is, how do you play that responsibility card, right? And the way I see it is we're not doing that as the United States or as a developed nation. The other issue is the model for what a developed country is not sustainable. If you think about the number of countries that fit that definition of a developed nation, it's 14%. And they're driving this problem for 86% of the planet who do not have these living standards. So is that what can we have a planet that has every nation as an industrialized nation? The answer is we can't even do it with 14% of the planet. Wow. So it really is a game changer what we're talking about. And it's the data, right? The data is apolitical. The question is, as a society, what do we want to do? Right. We've made big changes since the founding of this nation in terms of how society is structured and functions. So we can do it. And to get to your last question, which is, how do we move forward? Well, for me, and the way that I'm trying to lead by example is collaboration. I work with non-scientists in diverse disciplines to try to promote this idea of data-driven strategies. You have to start from somewhere, and I use a silly analogy. It's like a soccer team. You can't have a soccer team with just goalies. You can't have a soccer team with just forwards. You need these folks to be able to talk with each other. And right now, as a society, we have great goals. Hey, look, this person is very famous for doing this or that. But they don't work well with the other parts of the government that also need to work with that person. And that's an issue. We're just very poor collaborators.
Dr. Carmona, hold on one second, Sabrina. I think we do have a couple of callers. Mike, are you there? Are you there, Mike?
Yeah.
Okay, welcome to We Got Issues. Thank you for calling in.
All right. I hope you'll give me the opportunity to ask a couple of quick questions because this is a pretty contentious topic. All right, for one, you always hear, just like with Corona, science is always challenged, correct?
Science is always challenged?
Yes. Science is always challenged.
I see. Well, we always, yes, we are challenged all the time. Whenever I publish something, it gets reviewed. And what reviews do is challenge me and say, I don't like this idea, cite this better, we don't agree with this idea, change the language. My last paper, there was a term I used, one of the reviewers did not like it. I had to change it. So yeah, we're challenged all the time.
So I can get a couple more questions and keep the answer simple. All right, now, if I recall, back in late 60s, early 70s, we were being told we're going into a ice age again. and they were using the same data or scientific data. Well, that got reversed pretty easily. Now, okay, Al Gore came out with inconvenient truths. Where was he getting his data at that time? How many of his predictions were correct?
Right. So that's not how science works. It's not about correct. We work with models. In the 1970s, the computers that were used to
computer models
people on the moon
are only as good as the data you put in.
computer on your phone.
Hello?
Sorry.
Go ahead,
Repeat that.
sir.
All right. Well, I'm saying computers are only as good as the data you put in. So, well, I mean, things change over a matter of even a decade, 10 short years. So, actually, everything you put in today could be altered in 10 years, correct?
So, computers, it's not just the data. The way that computers are being used today is very different. So, let me explain how the climate model is built. If you take the atmosphere, which is vertical, and then across latitudes, which is horizontal, you end up with a volume. That volume gets partitioned into cubes that are all stacked. Every single one of those cubes gets a climate model, and they're all added together. One computer cannot do that. Your computer, my computer cannot do that. You need what are called supercomputers, which actually do multitasking. So they're doing these processes for big chunks of this three-dimensional thing we call the atmosphere. They weren't doing that in the 70s.
All right, so everything that they were putting in for Al Gore's studies were miscalculated.
Been updated. That all has been updated, which is what science does. We build on knowledge. There's a famous Isaac Newton quote: "If I saw further, I stood on the shoulders of giants."
I don't have any questions on this, so can I interrupt?
Mike, can you allow Dr. Carmona to finish when you ask a question? And we have other callers, so this is going to have to be your last question. Thanks. Go ahead.
All right. One more quick one then. All right. How can you determine man-made or is it just climate? Is it the Earth? And why is China not being pulled into this, or even India, much more than we are? And I'll hang up and listen to your answer.
Okay, so great question. The answer for your first question is chemistry. That's how we know. We can tell if a CO2 molecule came from a plant, a cow, a human, meaning physically, right, like gas stuff, versus fossil fuels. Remember, fossil fuels are ancient plants and animals that have been buried in the ground back 65 million years. That signature is quite different. We can tell them apart. If you want the technical term, it's called stable isotope ecology. We can tell that molecule apart. So that's how we know it's human. And that's not something new. We've known that since the 50s. The part of the question is, in terms of that geopolitical, remember, I'm a scientist. I'm not involved in those circles. But it has to do with the definition of how we've become a developed nation is what everybody else is using. It's the same playbook. You know, we didn't write it. All the developed nations wrote it. So when you have these great economies, Brazil, Russia, India, China, they're following that same playbook. So just to give you a contrast, people talk about deforestation in the tropics because we've already done it here in the States. It's already been done. So it's the same here. It's why is China developing? Well, because we already did. They're just following our playbook.
Wow.
Which is no longer adequate.
Wow. I mean, I love how you're tackling these issues because, again, for the rest of us who are not scientists, who, have not studied in this field, thank you so much for breaking it down so that we can start to wrap our head around this issue. We do have another caller. Tanisha, are you on the line? Tanisha, are you still there? Okay, she must have hung up. Tanisha, if you like, we'd love for you to call back, and we'd love for more of you to call us at 313-778-7600 with your questions about global warming and climate control. And so I'm going to throw it over to, I believe, Sabrina, you wanted to ask Dr. Carmona something.
Hey, Doctor, thank you so much for being with us today.
This is great. Thank you.
Oh, my. It's such a hard topic because you do this every day. You study it. You're looking for answers. But my heart is just thinking because it just doesn't seem like we're going anywhere fast in solutions.
Yes.
And the problem is so big. And I know we must collaborate and get better in areas, but when you see unprecedented wildfires, you see the heat of Siberia, the effects of climate change, weather patterns that are absolutely unheard of. We had our hottest January, on record, one of the hottest Januaries ever. It's disturbing. And so I know you don't have all the answers, but what can we do as everyday individuals to care, to make a difference? What do we do? I mean, because I don't seem to be very hopeful right now with climate change. And it is so politicized. I mean, it is such, I mean, it's right before our very eyes that our earth is eroding right before our very eyes. So it's not a falsehood. So what do you think, Doctor?
Well, I know it can seem very overwhelming. I certainly agree with that. But I also believe that part of the human condition is being hopeful. We're always looking to improve. That's just our nature. We also happen to live in a country that reinvents itself. It does it over and over again because it has to be updated, right? So I feel like we're asking the right questions, right? These are not easy because it means changing lifestyle. My answer to your specific question may be a little bit dual intentioned. So I think that the science points to, we have all these reports that point to 1.5 degrees being exceeded in the next 8-9 years, if not for sure by 2040. And it looks like 2 degrees warming is definitely on the horizon, not just 1.5, but we're actually going to be moving into 2. That climate, the resulting climate, it's the way society is going to have to function in that kind of world. It's not like the one we're in right now. And you're probably seeing all the effects of, right now with climate refugees. There are parts of the southeast Asia that just, those islands are already flooded. You can't grow any food. They're already, these deep environmental migrants. And if you think about it, how do you keep a culture when your home is no longer existent? It's underwater. And now you're living in a different country that's asking you, hey, we're a different country now. You should acclimate. You're going to lose all that heritage. And so I feel like this issue of what can we do, there's two pieces to it. Yes, as individuals, certainly there are changes that we need to be adopting. But I think we've moved beyond that. I think, as the caller mentioned, in the 70s, I think that would have been a great strategy. Let's change, with the gas shortages in the 70s, my parents told me about that when they were living in California. That would have been a great time to kind of revisit this idea of fossil fuels. The problem that we have now is that it's more urgent and more immediate. We're already living this crisis. And I feel that we need folks in, for example, yourselves and folks that are listening who are in leadership positions. It doesn't matter if it's an organization in a community or a university like myself or a private company. We need folks that are in these leadership positions to effect change. And that means all sectors. I can tell you this, as a university professor, there is no major in my university that does not talk about climate change.
Wow.
It's uniform. Everyone. It doesn't matter if you're in business. It doesn't matter if you're in engineering. It doesn't matter if you're in English. You are talking about this and you're incorporating into your lessons. So right now what we need is leadership, and it has to be structural. It cannot be just individual actions. It's moved beyond that.
Right. It's beyond, wow. It's beyond that. You know what? We have a couple of callers, and I want to try to get to them. Alicia, are you still there? Alicia? Yes, I'm here. Thank you for calling in, Alicia. Welcome to We Got Issues. Do you have a comment or question for Dr. Carmona?
Yes, I do. Thank you for having this important discussion. I live in Bergen County, New Jersey, and my local municipality's recycling program is selective in accepting plastic. But in my hometown of Boston, Massachusetts, they accept every numbered plastic. What can I do to recycle more when my local municipality doesn't accept all the numbers?
Right. So recycling is a big topic. That would be another great show. There's a lot of issues around this. So again, I'll start with the science and then we'll move from there. So we talk about in STEM this thing called the law of conservation of mass. You can't create mass, you can only recycle it, right? So recycling makes sense, but because plastics are polymers, these particles that are kind of linked in a chain. Think of Legos. You're stacking in units, you get these different types of plastics. That's what those numbers refer to. They're different types of plastics, and they behave in very different ways. Chemically and thermically, they'll behave very, some are rigid, some are pliable, and they'll change. The numbers are to help separate those types of plastics, which have these really long names. Polymers usually have long names. The problem is that every time you collect those and you process them, their chemistry changes. They're no longer usable for what they initially started their life as. So if you take a water bottle, you can recycle that, but it won't work as a water bottle. It has to be used as something that now will behave differently. So there's that issue. There are a lot of chemists that are working on chemically recycling so that you can conserve that polymer so that it behaves the same. So what happens is that even though you're recycling, putting it in the bin and turning it in, that material isn't coming back as the bottle, as the detergent bottle. It's not coming back. It's coming back as something else, if at all. The second part of this is geopolitical. We used to, as a nation, send our plastic to developing nations, specifically in Southeast Asia, to process that recycling material, and they would pay us to do that. They're no longer doing that. For the last 2 years, they haven't been doing that. So we're not able to send our plastic to get processed anymore because no one wants our, garbage. And so that means that we are sending a lot more to the landfill. So even though you're putting it on the curb, it's not actually being recycled. The second part of that is the manufacturing. The folks that actually take that recycled material only use, I forgot the number, I believe it's between 4 and 9%. That's the best we can do in terms of recycling that material. So that's very low. So again, I've had this conversation at my university about recycling programs. Again, as a scientist, suggestion would be banning single-use plastics. Let's just not use the material at all. Because when you bring plastic to life,
I was going to ask you, not to interrupt, but so then really getting bottled water, all of those bottled waters, is that a big issue, Dr. Carmona?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We need to start thinking about plastic as something that's very expensive, meaning once you make it, can we make the most use out of that material? Because even when you chop it down and melt it again, you have now degraded the quality of that plastic to no longer have the thresholds for that manufacturing process. So that means you have to create new plastic. And so now that we're learning about the degradation being a problem for manufacturing, we're also learning about the biological implications in the environment. The papers that I have my students read in freshman class, we are detecting microplastics, these plastics that break down smaller, sometimes they're manufactured that way, like in your toothpaste, in human placentas. We're seeing it in the bloodstream. We're seeing it in the intestine. Wow. Evidence that it's in the fecal matter. So it's in our diet. It's moving into wombs. It's a bigger problem than just a recycling issue.
Wow. I mean, you are really educating us on today. I never, ever thought all the way to, I know. Real quickly, Marathon, are you on the line? We have a caller, Marathon. Are you still there?
Yes, I'm here. You know,
Okay, thank you so much for calling in.
There was a time back when I was coming up as a child, we could just about judge each season. Now the birds don't even know when to fly south.
Right.
That's a great point. That is a great point. And we're seeing it sooner. I remember talking to some of the, older folks who would talk about when snows would hit and when summers would, and we're now seeing it even in one lifetime. Like I remember not being this hot, and I'm hearing about my family's still in California. My mom called me last weekend. It's 120. I've never seen that. That's insane. So the problem is this, and there's a really interesting paper that just came out of the University of Michigan literally last week on this. So if you think about, when you were in college, even when you talked about, the curve in the class in high school, this little bell curve, think of that as the tolerance for a lot of species. We like average temperatures. We don't do well with the extremes, either too cold or too hot, right? You have this little bell. So what's happening is as the climate becomes more variable, either changing in mean or in variance, the season is either arriving earlier or it's taking later. So winters are getting shorter, summers are getting longer. And so if you're a species that feeds the baby chicks when the spring hits and the spring's arriving earlier, those chicks that are hatching early, they're getting food. But if you hatch when normally spring would come, but by now it's already summer, those insects are gone. You don't eat, you don't make more offspring. And because the chicks that are making offspring are the ones that hatch early, you have a shift in we call it the phenotype. It's the timing of events of egg laying. So you see that there's this shift in birds is a great example where they're coming out earlier because the food is available early. I should also say this. Wow. Not only are species behaving differently to the timing of events with the moving of the seasons, but even one species can have multiple responses depending on where it is on its range. So there's this very famous study about 10, 12 years ago that looked at a bird that's very common in Europe. And they looked at one end, which is the United Kingdom and in England, and the other, the spectrum of the same species, same bird, but in the Netherlands. So if you look at those two, they found that same species in the UK was responding to earlier springs. So you see this shift in egg laying. But in the Netherlands, there was no shift. It was something totally different. So they were egg laying the same way that they've been doing for the last 50 years. So one species, two different responses to climate change. So, another way to think about it is the coffee you had this morning has a thermal tolerance. It likes mountaintops, right? That's where it was native to in Asia and Africa. When we bring it over to the New World, that's why Colombian coffee is so great. It's the same thermal band. But as climate now shifts and warmer temperatures, a lot of species that are having trouble responding either because they don't have the range or because, elevation, there's no more mountain available, or because one part of the population is being pushed to lay eggs earlier or another. And it's a mix. So different species is what we're studying. We're trying to see what's happening. The Michigan study that I mentioned, I only mentioned it because it's super interesting. In addition to laying eggs earlier, they're finding that the bird wings are becoming more elongated. They have no idea why. They said, wow, this is measurable, but we don't know what it means. So there's a lot of questions that we generate.
It means something, right. And you know what, Marathon?
I have one more thing I wanted to add just before we go.
Sure, go ahead.
For us that believe in the Bible and that God created the heavens and the earth, could it be that man has put his hands on too many things and that's why it's haywire?
That's a great point. And I think it goes down to a biblical term, stewardship. Being a good steward means we have a responsibility to act on data, whether it agrees with what we're doing or not.
Right.
in any sense, right? In this case, since we're talking about climate, but it could be in any sense. Once you start seeing it's your responsibility as a steward to do that, to respond. Another question is, taking my call, ladies. Yes.
Thank you for calling, Marathon. We truly appreciate you for calling in. That was a fantastic question, and we're glad that you asked it on We Got Issues. Go ahead, Dr. Carmona.
Yeah, I love these questions. These are great terms, great dynamics. I like how I'm able to connect the science, which is what I love doing. So thank you.
One of the things that I think is really interesting in listening to you is the fact that everything is interconnected. Everything is interconnected. I mean, from the insects feeding the birds, and from the birds laying their eggs, and if they don't lay their eggs at a certain time, then the insects are gone. So everything connects to everything. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Gloria. Question. I have a real question because I've been writing so many notes. I mean, I can go from over here to over there to over here to over there. And about a year and a half ago, I was with Caterina, actually. We went to a friend's house, and we were learning how to cook, and it was all about vegan and stuff like that. But they talked seriously about animal eating, about meat, about how livestock is making such a huge damage to the planet. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that that was one question I had, the unawareness. And the other part of my question, I don't know if we have time to touch it, but I just want to bring it to light, that how in the world do we educate people when we have some people like one of our callers who was very passionate about this doesn't exist. It isn't right. And then we have people that are very passionate about it definitely is a problem. The science says it. What are you thinking? So I know those are two different things. But what part does meat play when it comes to global warming?
Right. So a great question. And one way to think about this is these industrialized processes that were very important in the history of humanity, right? Of making food available in mass quantities for the large societies that we have, 350 million just in the U.S. I mean, it's a lot of people, right? So these industrialized processes were really important at that stage, but we're hitting 7.5 billion on the planet, and we can't sustain that level of industrialization. So every sector is now looking at microgrids, and I have some engineering friends that are looking at microgrids for energy. So it's no longer this massive grid, but rather like the internet, where you have small networks that talk to each other and are resilient because of that network approach. Industrialized process is just not sustainable.
Wow.
And we probably, in terms of the health, and I have colleagues that work in health, we, as a society in the U.S., we just eat too much meat.
I hate to answer, but go ahead, Chris. I know. We have to come to a close. Dr. Carmona, thank you so much for coming on. We got issues, and I tell you, we are absolutely going to.
Because literally, we could be on here another hour. You have given us a wealth of information, and so thank you so much for your time on today. Have a real quick announcement. Join WFDF 9:10 a.m. the Superstation as we air the Rocket Mortgage Classic live from the Detroit Golf Club. This event is scheduled for Thursday, July 1st through Friday, July 2nd, 12 to 6 p.m. and on Saturday, July 3rd, Sunday, July 4th, 1 to 6 p.m. This event will air on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation and on the Superstation app and Sirius XM Radio. You've been listening to We Got Issues on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation. We'll see you on tomorrow. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Wow, so much good information. Thank you, Dr. Carmona.
Thank you. It was great. I love the range. It was phenomenal.
Yes.
This conversation was so good.
Brilliant.
Brilliant is right.
Brilliant.
Yes.
I was like, what?
I want to know the answer to all these questions, so we have to have you back.
Oh,
There was a great question
This is a
on the
town
chat
hall.
about lithium batteries. That's another whole piece
Right.
because if you look at what they're doing in the countries where they're doing that, it's incredible the damage they're doing to. And we keep talking about electric cars, and yeah, it's such an interesting conversation because it is all linked. You're absolutely right.
And you know what you enlightened me on was I felt so good. My son is so passionate about recycling, and so he was on top of us. Oh, you got to recycle, so when I tell you I'm so proud of myself, but now I'm finding out that only a little bit of what we're doing in the recycling is really making a difference.
So is it important to recycle? Because my husband's like all over recycle.
9% is better than no percent.
Right. That's what I was thinking.
The problem is
a lot of people.
The problem that I see is we've been told that this is an individual responsibility. When it's a globalized economy, how can it possibly be an individualized? It makes no sense. It has to be a globalized
it's not
answer.
Required in Alabama. In some places, it's very required. So that's what makes it individual, because politically, people want their freedom, but they must not want their lives.
Right. There's a very famous meme. My daughters show me these things, so I'm only bringing it up for that reason. There's this dinosaur with a little baby dinosaur sitting on the top, and it's looking up, and it says, looking up at the stars, and they say, I like the one that's getting brighter.
Wow.
So I understand the political nature of this conversation, but we're just staring at an asteroid that's coming every day closer, closer, and closer. So there are, and I didn't get a chance to say this because there's a lot of really cool points. There are, right now, if you Google, a society that believes the earth is flat. The difference is we don't make them into governors or senators. That's the problem. They can have a voice. Just go do it in some corner of the internet. The adults need to talk about what we do with the information that we need to act on.
Right.
And that's really the issue. I mean, I'm not trying to make people think one way or another. What I'm looking for is, can I identify the leaders with whom I can work to enact these changes?
And I know you, and thank you so much for your extra time. I know our Facebook audience are enjoying the after show. But you know what? As we get ready to close down, the thing that has me a little worried or concerned, or is that they talked about the pandemic. They talked about what was coming. They did a movie about it.
Right.
It came, and we are now still in the midst of this coronavirus. And so for those who said, no, there's never going to be a pandemic in our lifetime, it's not going to happen. Well, 600,000 deaths later, the pandemic happened.
In the U.S.
Let's not count the entire world.
Right. There's been pandemics that haven't made it out of the Middle East or in Asia, and just recently, and that's why that part of the world was better equipped for this turnaround. This is a great example for my classes that I bring up, and that is how important it is to have in society the two fields, the ones that explore, which is what I am, right, a theoretical biologist, but also the ones that apply, like medical doctors, etc. And I think COVID brings this to light. New virus, never seen on the planet, pops up. None of our immune systems are able to handle it. It's brand new. So what do we need? Oh, we can't act on it because we don't have the new vaccine. And these folks who are all theoretical start thinking, hey, we need to speed this process up. What if we use this technology that we haven't used in this scale? Let's try it out. Oh, it works. Great. Now let's mass produce it. And so in a very short amount of time, record time, we produce vaccines, whereas when the last U.S. pandemic hit in 1918, it would have taken 3-4 years to produce that same process. It shrunk. But it was this collaboration in society between folks who think about thinking and the folks that make it happen, that act. And that's really an important role to have in balanced societies. I mentioned I work in El Salvador. They're trying to figure out climate change. They have no scientists. They're all doctors, engineers. They're all the ones that are applying. So they're trying to figure out, how do we deal with this new problem? They've never seen, these issues. There are folks who are growing corn, and they're using the farm that their parents and grandparents used, but the bioclimate for corn has shifted. Now it's no longer apt for corn, but that's what they learned. So their corn crops die because they're planting using the same tools they learned, but the climate has shifted. And so how does a nation that has been doing traditional farming, and that includes just crops, but also animals, and all these shifts now are no longer making it optimal to do those practices. And here we are in the most developed nation in the world, and we ignore data.
Right.
So it's quite a paradigm.
It really, really is. Dr. Carmona, thank you so much for the extra time. You are so passionate. We love when our guests are passionate about what they do. So you got to make a promise. And we still have our Facebook audience watching that you will come back.
Yes, absolutely. I love this. I really enjoyed this. The questions are fantastic. The connectiveness is what I really like, because, as a scientist, that's really my role, is to help understand this data. And I love working with folks who are then able to make action. And I love that you're doing exactly that. So it's brilliant. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.